Going on, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Landscape Accelerator podcast. Joining me today is Megan Montgomery, does a lot of landscape design work in Louisiana. I'm going to let her introduce herself. So take it away, Megan. Tell us a little bit more about who you are, what you do, and some of the services that you guys offer.
Hey, my name is Megan Montgomery. My background is in landscape architecture. I graduated from Texas A&M with my undergrad in landscape architecture in 2007. I initially started working in luxury commercial landscaping with a national company, and I moved around a lot with them across the U.S. And then during our economic recession, I came back down south. And with that knowledge of understanding, going after bigger designs and bigger square footages of installs on the commercial level, was able to take on a job in New Orleans and kind of travel the coast. Upon 2016, I was having young children, so I decided to launch my business in 2017. And from there, I really blew up in my production side. I was strictly doing design work, and then people were like, no, I want you to build it. So then I started building it, especially during the pandemic. And then my husband had gotten laid off, and he's a background of civil engineering. And so he got me going with the build part, and we were able to really start overhauling beautiful estates. I have properties that we call Disneyland. We go in and out and literally remove whatever they had that was not working with the environment. And I use all of my principles of design. I listen very intensely of their needs, and I just marry the property with the owner. And then once we finished the install, they were like, no, you have to be the one maintaining it, because there's no way I'm going to let this go again. And I'm happy to say I still do my homework on those properties. They're only getting prettier every season we go and change out. And some of them we do monthly, some of them we do quarterly. If people call me and are like, hey, I would like to change and go into my second phase. So 90% of my work now this year has been returning clients to continue on embellishing their estates and continuing on their story that I already started. And they really enjoy our work, and I really enjoy their business because they really let me be myself. I'm an artist at heart, and running a business was not something I wanted to do. It kind of just chose me because people know me and they trust me. And a lot of the work that I have now, I have a high social media platform, but it really is word of mouth at this point with business.
Yeah, and I think that's really the testament of a successful business, is something where the clients that you work with one time, you keep them forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
It shows that you know your stuff, the clients care about you, but also those are the dream clients where it's like they trust you in entirety, and they know that, hey, just let Megan do her thing, trust the process, just turn my backyard into a piece of art, right? That's what they want. And that gives you the complete freedom. And if the budget's right for them too, then you can really go crazy and do exactly what you want and what you envision for it. So that's awesome.
Absolutely.
That's really, really cool.
Yes.
So I know you talked about it a lot, but before you started into landscaping, what were some of like your previous jobs or previous experience that you had? I know you said you kind of fell into it, so I'm curious, like the backstory, how you kind of ended up there.
My very first job was in high school at a golf course called Cajun Links. It was owned by my best friend's dad. And from there, I kind of just liked the fact that you can just be outside. And then my second job was at a mechanical engineering firm. I interned there a few times doing mechanical drafting on AutoCAD for all the Walgreens that were being popped up across the nation. And then in college, that's kind of what I did in and out of. But then I truly interned with what was called Brickman back in the day in the Woodlands. And then my first true design that kind of just put the light bulb on in my head that I was where I wanted to be. Like, I never saw myself truly being in a design build firm. You're in school, you're doing all these drawings, and I just thought I was going to be drawing the rest of my life, when in all actuality, the only way you can learn is by getting your hands dirty.
Mm,
Everything that I have learned is by being outside, physically doing it. And I really would love to stress that you can design all day, but it's going to change in the field. It's just inevitable. And if it changes, fine, roll with it. Do a change order, switch up the materials, switch up the square footage. As long as your principles of design stay intact and everything falls into place and the client is still happy with the output, then the number one thing besides that is communication.
mm.
So you got to be there not only in person doing it, but you also have to show up for yourself to be the face of your company. Because if they're relying on you, they want to see you.
Right.
And I've noticed that communication is really key in a lot of this on my end of the profession. As yeah, it's a lot different than just going and mowing a yard. Like you're actually transforming space.
Absolutely. And I think the biggest thing that you mentioned there that I want to touch on a little more is the experience of not only designing, like anyone can sit on their computer and draw it up and make this amazing landscape, but having that actually work out in reality is a completely different thing. Just a little bit of background.
100%.
My dad and my brother both work in construction. They do a lot of erecting of like steel and fiberglass work. And I've worked with them a couple times, and it's always the same thing where like they get these elaborate, beautiful blueprints and these designs that the engineers made up, but there's always issues. It never, ever, ever turns out the way that you can just sit there and draw it on a computer and it's perfect. And oh yeah, well, AutoCAD or the system, whatever, said it would check out and it's fine. But then you get there and the slope is different and there's rocks underground and there's all these other things
Right.
that happen and you can never really truly account for that. So I think that, like you said, being able to do both and get the experience of doing it in the field as well only makes you a better designer and vice versa because you know what's actually possible. And then it gives you the freedom too of like you get to that yard, you get to that space, and there's something there. There's an X factor, a variable that wasn't accounted for. And now you can make decisions on the fly, change things up, and still have it turn out awesome. So
And
really,
if you haven't been doing it, it can be intimidating. And it is hard labor. I mean, I installed a job by myself yesterday because we're shorthanded, and I'm not intimidated to do it. And it's because it becomes part of your routine. And if you keep that system going, you're just going to know what to do within that second and not be feel overwhelmed and have that answer for your client because that client is looking at you. You got to be the doctor. You got to be the designer. You got to just show up for that work. And this work, it includes all of it, the math, the marketing, the science, like take all aspects of creativity. Like you're almost like the business executive and the creative executive in the same person.
yep,
You have to wear a lot of hats, but at the same time, your main focus is the outcome. Are the plants going to thrive in the environment? Are the principles of design aligned? Um, how is it going to be in 5 years? How sustainable is this going to be? How often are we going to be changing out the mulch? What type of mulch do you want to use? Like, I can't tell you because of the drought that we had last year in Louisiana that was historical. I'm very proud to say I have designs from last year that look gorgeous this year because I did my homework. And I just stress to people all the time, don't worry about anything other than what's going to work. And even going into the local nurseries that I purchased from, Forest Hill being one of them up north and one local one here, you can almost see we're all on the same page with our plant palette because we're all doing our research and studying what's surviving. And so, okay, well, we can't use that plant anymore because it doesn't survive here anymore. So, okay, well, what's the next best alternative?
right.
And you have to have those answers.
Yeah, I never thought about that honestly from the nursery perspective too, where it's like if they're stocking inventory of plants and they are aware of what's happening in the season, like climate
Hmm.
or weather-wise, they're selling people plants that are going to die, and that's bad for their business too, right? So
Well, get this. I
I
just
never
had
thought
that
about
experience.
that.
Yeah,
That's
I had that
interesting.
experience. I have my one of my clients. She went to this local nursery. It wasn't one that I would purchase from because it's high retail, but she gives me a Stilby, and she goes, "What is this?" And she paid $20 for a 5 inches Stilby, three of them. So she paid $60 for these
Right.
plus tax. And I was like, That is a perennial that I exchanged because agapanthus didn't grow up in Northern Virginia. So it's like that's the second layer I would use as agapanthus. And I was like, I would do like a row of pink azaleas and then I would drop down with white astilbe or
Mm.
vice versa. I love the pink and white combination because I'm a girl. And that's what she got. She got the pink astilbe and she goes, well, why can't it grow here? I said, because it doesn't get cold enough. It's like you can buy it as an annual, but it's technically a perennial in the northern environment. So she's like, so I paid $60 for 3 plants to die? I was like, yeah, pretty much.
Sorry to break
It
it
would
to
look
you,
good in a
but
shady spot. So we did. We found a little shady spot for it. And I said, if they come back next year, it might get cold enough because it has been getting very cold here in South Louisiana, but not on a long consistency that this plant technically needs to nap at that climate. But I said, who knows? Just play with it. So yeah.
okay. Awesome. So I want to pick your brain about the principles of design because you've mentioned that a couple times. I come more from the lawn care, landscaping background, not so much design and install. So
Right.
if you can run me through kind of like what's the thought process when it comes to creating a landscape from scratch? What are the factors? What are the things you're thinking of when you're kind of saying, hey, here's this canvas. How are we gonna, arrange things and what are we looking for? What are the key things for someone that maybe doesn't have a
When
ton of
you're
experience?
looking, I go off lines. I 100% go off lines, especially if it's hard edge lines. The first thing I want to do is I want to make movement with the bed line. I like to call it, I put the female to the male. So like my house is very, you know, very 90-degree angled. And then I take my bed lines and I just make the meandering swoops around it. Some people want it to square off, but most people like the female to the male. And then from there, I like hierarchy. You need balance, you need rhythm, unity. And sometimes people want symmetrical, but most of the time they just want it to feel balanced. So when they come out in their space, what you want to try to do is move the human body through the space. So you want to benefit the experience of the human and you also want to benefit the life of the plant. So
Mm.
it really is a very delicate connection that you have to understand between the two. Also, drainage. I don't do anything until I know where the water is going. There are
Mm.
so many jobs that I'll go on that contractors have done, and the plants are sitting in that drip line in 2 feet of water. And all the plants have root rot. I'm like, well, first of all, they need a French drain or something right here. The bed needs to come out. It needs to be raised. It's contractor grade soil. It's not even proper bedding soil. And then you're looking at the actual details and you're like, we got to start over again. Like,
Mm.
this isn't even doing anything for the architecture or for the space. So people come to me because they want to feel themselves in the space. And how you get people to feel themselves in the space is by the principles of design. You can have all kinds of different designs, but how are you going to make it feel good?
Mm.
So when you incorporate the balance, the unity, the harmony, all that, it doesn't even matter what materials you use. Just does it make sense? Does it function? And how do you feel when you're in it? The number one thing you do as a landscape architect is you go back and critique your work.
Mm.
And that's what I'm doing now currently is I'm going back to my properties and saying, okay, what is thriving, what is working, and how is the space being utilized? And if it isn't, then I'll come up with a method to change it. I mean, no, not every design is going to be perfect. And over time, people change.
Mm.
So especially if it's someone like the former client I was telling you, she moved and I got grandfathered into the next owners. The next owners hated everything she did because it wasn't giving them that vibe. So
Right.
we created a whole new space for them with a
Okay.
whole new plant palette. Yeah.
So when it comes to the unity, balance, harmony, things like that, can you give any like particular examples of like how you'd go about achieving that? Or like in practice, what does that look like? Or like what are some things that you can do, some like actionable steps that you would take to achieve that result?
Um, it's really hard for me to explain because it's just a gift to me.
Mm.
Like I just see it. As soon as I see the space, I immediately draw the picture in my brain. And I have to be honest with you, I've done jobs at $30,000 without a drawing. I even looked at my crew, I was like, just trust me. I just go to the space, I write down what I'm going to do. The plants arrive and they're like, where's all this going? And I'm like, just trust me. Just trust my process. And I literally create it in that moment.
Right.
I don't know how to really explain it, but if you were to look at I guess that's something at bird's eye view. You would take that voided space and you would just break it down into quadrants, find the scaling, and then find how you want those beds to go. Find where the walking path is going to do. Work with your lines. Your lines are the most important part because those lines are going to make now your space to create your hardscaping or your softscaping. And then from there, you build in your layering for your plants. And then you pick the materials for your hardscaping. And then how does that merge? Do you want something loose? Do you want something like travertine? Do you want flagstone with decomposed granite? Do you want your sidewalks to go symmetrical? Do you want them to meander and be loose? Like I did a loose, very loose, and earthy vibe, but some of my clients want this beautiful, pristine English garden look, but how is the scaling? Scaling is one. So take your square footage and make sure the scaling of your space is proportional to all of your movements, softscape and hardscape. And then from there, you work with materials. And that's really how I go.
Right on. I can tell you're definitely an artist. You're one of those people that it's just there's a vision in your brain. You can see it. You don't need a blueprint, don't need papers, don't need nothing. Just like, okay, I see it in my head and I can make it happen. I'm like that too, where like I'm not disorganized, but I'm very much the type of person where it's like once the idea is in my head, the path is laid out. I know what I need to do to get it done.
Pretty much. Yeah. I mean, after 18 years of doing it, it's like in my back pocket. And I joined the Master Gardening Program, I think in like 11 years ago here in Lafayette Parish. And for my volunteer hours, I would do design courses. And like because the only way I can do it is actually draw it out. I was like, okay, here's an example of like a house. And this is how the fence lines sit. Okay, this is how I would go about a bed line. And then within that bed, this is how I would make space for different layers of plants. Well, it's sunny here. So these are the plants that I would make in these layers. I have three clients now. They only like green and white. Straight up, just want green and white. But how do you play with that green and white? What are the principles of design behind that green and white? There's your hierarchy. There's your texture. There's your balance. There's your unity. So as long as you take that space and play with the principles of design, it's almost like sky's the limit with being creative within that space because really nothing can go wrong except the wrong material.
Right. It's definitely one of those things where I can tell you've done it for so long that it's like the principles of design or whatever. If I was to sit down and try and do something like that, I'd be very much conscious of those different principles and be trying to like force them into it. But then you get to that point where you've achieved sort of a level of mastery with your craft where it's like you're doing those things without even really thinking about it. They just, it's in the back of your head and everything that you're seeing, those principles are already incorporated into how you're seeing it. It's just kind of second nature at that point.
It really is. And I think the more you do it, and really, I get a lot of inspiration off of social media, following Instagram. I love following European platforms because they're constantly making changes. And especially in Dubai, you'd be surprised what I find in Dubai. I follow this one guy. He's phenomenal. And at one point, the Venetian wanted to hire me out in Las Vegas. And he kind of does that. He's just a property manager for like a Disneyland thing, but it's not Disneyland, it's something else. But that's what he does. He just constantly is turning around these designs. And that's what I would love, honestly, to do is just have this one giant estate that all they would do is be like, okay, every season, you got to just rip all this out and start all over again. And that to me as an artist would feed my soul.
Right.
Yeah.
The complete playground, like the sandbox of, hey, do whatever you want. Every year is a different story. Like,
here's an acre. Can you create a park? Sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So tell me the story of how you got your first client.
My very first client on my own, oh my gosh, it would be my best friend's mom out in the little town I grew up. And she said, Megan, my yard, and I grew up watching her in the garden. And so she's like, I just can't do my yard anymore. She's like, please help me. I was like, sure. And it really was. And then after that was my best friend. And then after that was an old classmate of mine from middle school who's now our city councilman. And they just, because they knew I was here and they knew I could do it. And then I was like, oh my God, I actually have to do this now. I don't have a crew. And I was like, oh, well, here it is. I got my dad's truck. I got his tools. My husband was away working in oil. I didn't have kids yet. And so that's how I started in my dad's little pickup truck.
Yeah. Just making it work by any means, working with what you got.
I try so hard to stay debt free, but unfortunately, when you grow, you need the money.
Yeah.
So I eventually got to that level where I had to ask for loans, which all came from close family members. So,
awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, that pretty much aligns with a lot of people's story, I think, where, my experience too with my landscaping business, same deal. A lot of the first couple clients was like mowing my own, parents' yard or the neighbors or just people that
All starts.
And for the guys that ask, like, how do I get my first couple clients? The answer by default, 99% of the time is like, dude, reach out to your network, friends, family, employers, other people that you know in the community. And once they see that you can actually do the work and, you can maybe cut them a little deal because you're just getting started, but financially too, that kind of gives you the ability to, get your own tools, get your own truck, kind of get started.
Exactly.
So that by the time you start having strangers hire you for your business, you've got the tools and the resources and whatever you need to actually do those services, not the proper way, but with you're set up for it and you're ready for it.
Mm-hmm. My first major purchase was in June of 2020 was my dump trailer. And it has been my best friend ever since. And every time I pass by the shop, my husband's like, you need to go get the bigger one. I'm like, I'm frugal. It's doing its job. I'll just get what I need delivered.
Yeah, the dump trailers are a lifesaver. Can't go wrong.
They really are. We did a hotel, and that's what we did. We backed the dump trailer and poured it right in that little crevice along the facade. It was so awesome. We didn't have to shovel anything. We just dumped raked. It was so flawless.
Yeah. My favorite memory with our dump trailer ever was we had a client that wanted, I forget if it was like 2 or 3 Japanese maples, and they were like between $300 to $500 each at the nursery we had got them from. And we put them in the back of the dump trailer and we're like, dude, there's no way that we're just going to be driving down the road with these like $1,000 worth of plants in the back of the trailer. So I jumped in the back, had my partner drive, and was just holding onto these plants in the back of the dump trailer, driving down the highway, making sure they weren't blowing or the leaves weren't getting messed up or anything like that. So that was a lot of fun, but I can see for
That's
sure
a lot of stories. I know.
Yeah.
That's one thing is we have stories. We have nicknames for our clients. Like we laugh a lot. I mean, the humor in this industry is flawless. Like I love the fact that, it's a really funny environment to work in. Like everyone has their quirks. And then if you have the humor behind it, like you just bring it up randomly on a job site and everyone just busts out laughing because they know exactly what you're talking about.
Yeah.
It's like almost like I went to Texas A&M. It's like the Aggie motto. Unless you're in it, you can't explain it.
Yeah.
And if you're, like you just can't explain. You have to do it.
There's definitely a lot of, stuff within the landscaping world that's very like not inside joke, but like you said, you kind of got to know what it is. And another thing I've noticed that's really awesome too is like I don't see it so much with other industries, whether it be like roofing or HVAC, electrical, stuff like that. But the landscaping community on like Instagram, TikTok, social media, with like all the memes, the jokes, and just people like making content and stuff, it's really tight knit. Like people are into it, and it's funny. And I think that's something
because it's a funny. Our thing is the animals. Every job site has its own animal, whether it's a goat, a cow, a rooster. My best friend is a chicken named Amber. She just comes around. You just have to start talking like them.
Right.
Yeah. And then we heard a donkey and a rooster like going hard in a fight in the country one day, and then we call the job sites by the dog's name. We're going to Pumpkin's house.
That's funny.
I know, it's cute. It becomes very, I don't know, lighthearted.
Absolutely. Making a hard day's work kind of light with the jokes and the humor, and
Yeah. Yeah, I don't micromanage. I don't do anything because I'm so in my head all the time, being creative and being the businesswoman, that like when I get to places and my crew just knows what to do, and it's just like I just go there just to hang out and cut up with them.
That's awesome. Right.
Yeah.
So if you think back to like your first year in business, what do you recall being like the biggest challenge or struggle that you were dealing with at that time? And how did you get over that? How did you overcome that?
I wouldn't really even call it my first year of business. I would call it my third year in business, because my third year in business is when my production launched. I think because I didn't go to business school, the coordination of the coming and going and having to understand the accounting and where my profit margin was falling for everything and keeping everything at bay, because I was running off of this as straight capital. I had no financial backing. So I think if I were to do it all over again, I wouldn't be so conservative with my money, because I was always afraid, my gosh, now I'm solely the breadwinner and I'm responsible for my family, because my husband was like, no, we're going to do this. We're going to go hard, because my phone kept calling. I wish I would have had coached myself more on the business side of it, because that's where I think I struggled the most, is having to coordinate and organize all of my, everything, that all my transactions coming and going. And I think because I'm such a creative mind that I had to switch off and become a CFO, I was like, I just breathed heavy, because it was the first time I had to step into those shoes. And I wish I would have coached myself more, maybe on podcasts, and listened to more of everyone. But then I would talk to other people in the business, and I'm like, y'all, I feel like I'm getting on an elevator and there's all these numbers and I'm just hoping for the best on whichever one I choose to push. They're like, oh, well, welcome to running a business. I'm like, oh, so this is normal? They're like, yeah. I was like, so you always don't know. Like, you just don't know. And they're like, no, you just always hope for the best.
Yeah.
Worse.
Welcome to the real world. Welcome to the life of a business owner. No one really knows what they're doing. We're all just giving it our best shot with the information that we have, making what we think is the best decision at the time. And
yes. And trust me, there were many times I would go back because we missed an area that was low. And oh my God, we started flooding their sunroom. We're like, ugh. And so we had to go and put an inlet. And, and I was like, no, like, I'll just eat the cost on it. $300. Who cares? Like, that part of me, that integrity, that composure that I had to hold, going back and critiquing myself and fixing my mistakes, is what turned me into such, like, I was very more conscientious at that point on how things were going to get laid out in the landscape. And that's when I really started to take focus more on the water and how things function first there. And then everything really was pretty, I think really my first legit year in production, I grossed well, and my profit margin was around 35%. So I was actually pretty happy with that. And then when the clients were calling back for seasonal rotation, I love this time of year because I'm doing 36 flats of of annuals on one property at a time with 2 pallets of redwood mulch. And then you have all that labor. I mean, the profit margin is great whenever you get to this level. So it was worth the anxiety. It was worth the tears, because there are days when, like, okay, what am I doing wrong? You're not doing anything wrong. It's just, you get the highs and lows in business big time. And I always look at the low spots as, okay, this is when you sit back and you reorganize yourself. And my motto now is, when you're low, you grow. And you just got to take it for what it is, and just know this is just season. And then you'll launch again, and then you'll go hard again. And then, yeah, it's a cycle. And that's one thing I wish I knew before I really took off. because I think I would have had a little bit more grace with myself.
Mm. Yeah, it's super easy to have things going wrong with the business that sometimes is in your control, sometimes out of your control, but it's very easy to internalize and make it a personal issue about yourself when in reality, it's like you're doing the best you can. And there are things that are going to happen that you could never have predicted it, could never have accounted for it, could never have, set yourself up to have handled that any better than you could have in that moment. And like you said, you got to give yourself some grace. And honestly, any setback is just an opportunity to learn a lesson that's going to help you take your business further in the future. So it's
Exactly.
part of
And that's why I embrace my failures, because if I wouldn't have had my failures, I wouldn't be where I'm at. And yeah, there are times where I wanted to throw in the towel and beat my head up against the wall and be like, is this even worth the? Yeah, it is. Because then you show up and you see your clients and how happy they are. I have been given the most beautiful text messages from people on like the most beautiful words that people can ever give you, because you help them come alive again. And
Mm,
it's like, okay, well, in a way, you are kind of working in a creation with God's babies. I mean, it is. It's a way to. It's almost like a touch of heaven, because I didn't make these plants. I'm just working with them, you know. But look what it can do. It can really change someone's whole entire psyche in their own space.
absolutely. And that's powerful stuff. That's really awesome. You
Hmm.
completely change someone's mood. And that really is the most rewarding part in my experience too with landscaping, doing trimming, mowing, stuff like that. When you leave a property and it just looks like something out of a magazine, you're like, I feel good about this, but the client feels even better because they get to come home to that every day. And
Yeah.
that's their space. So it's awesome. That's really
Yes. And the houses I go to are in the $1 million range. And their landscaping looks like you just need to set it on fire and forget it.
mm,
And then how we transform it, and then now we go back and maintain it. And like I just went to the one we installed exactly a year ago. We were back in the fall, and now we're back again in the spring. I looked up at Miss Carla and I said, "Oh my gosh!" Like you said, it looks like it belongs in a magazine. It's a 1860s plantation home, one of the first ones in this area. Um, the architecture alone is flawless. And then I saw her landscaping, and she goes, "I've been wanting to do this for 10 years now. And now that she finally got a chance to do it with me, she's like, man, she's in heaven because
yeah,
she has what she's always wanted."
that's awesome. And
Hmm.
it's good for you too to be able to be the person that delivers that for them as well. So,
Exactly.
yeah. What are your favorite and least favorite parts of running a business?
My favorite part of running a business is not having to stress out about anything other than waking up and doing what I have to do. The only, I mean, my favorite part about it is that I get to be myself. I
Mm,
don't have to cater to anything other than what I'm supposed to cater to, which is my own responsibilities. If I don't feel like working that day, I'm like, hey, I want to take a day off. They're like, sure. And I usually, that never really happens, but I can do that because there are times, like, especially in the summer when it gets hot, I'm like, hey, y'all, we worked hard for 4 days. Let's just take Friday off and I'll pay y'all. And they're like, oh, thank you. Like I can do that. I can give my employees like anything that they need and not make them feel bad. Like I pride myself on being a very good boss because I have a lot of people who've come in and out, but the ones that have really showed up for me have showed up for me in a way that I like never really expected. They're like, don't stress, we got your back. And because they love me because they're happy to work for me because I'm so relaxed and I'm organized now. And I'm like, okay, here's our schedule. Here's what we're doing. This is what we need to do. And then, I think the part that I hate the most is, you know, employee turnaround.
mm,
It's really, that is probably, the most stressful thing for me is even whenever one employee is sick, like yesterday, one of our employees just couldn't come in, and it's okay. They had a legitimate excuse, but I have to show up for myself, so I did an entire install alone, and
right.
it came out great. But yeah, it's just that's probably the downfall of a business is the employee turnover.
Yeah.
The upside of it is that I can get up and do whatever I want.
Yeah. A lot of freedom, but also a lot of
All the
headache.
stress.
Always putting out fires. You're a business owner, but you're a full-time, problem solver is really what it is. So
Yeah.
totally can relate to that. When it comes to attracting those like A player employees, the people that, like you said, show up to the business and help out in a big way, have you found anything in particular that's helpful for getting them in the door or like finding them, attracting them? Or is it kind of just like you got to sift for gold and, there's going to be plenty of people that come through that aren't a good fit and you just going to kind of,
I think because I'm such a specialty, I'm not like, it's funny, we're small, but we're mighty. My
mm,
books say I'm very mighty, but my projects are, you know, good sized projects. So it makes my revenue look like I make a lot, but in all actuality, it's all like for materials and taxes. But what it is I run mainly on a 4-man crew where I can split up people and we come together. But I think what I have a hard time keeping people is because it's hard labor. And Louisiana is hot. Right now, we're spoiled because the weather feels like Southern California. But in a month from now, your energy is gone by 10 in the morning, straight up. And if the humidity's on 100%, by 8 in the morning, you're like, okay, this sucks.
yeah.
And I really think because you're hauling rock, you're not just in and out with a weed eater in a truck. You're literally doing Flintstone work. You're digging with a shovel. So over time, and as my business has grown, I've purchased a really nice auger. I'm getting more equipment to help us be more efficient. And then what I love about the workers I have now is they're not just laborers; they have brains and they think. And they're like, "Okay, we're going to do this now to make this easier on us." I'm like, "Thank you," because I don't have the capacity anymore to think that way because I'm so busy being a business owner and a designer and a salesman. So now that I have people on board that are loyal and want to step that leadership role for me, it has really helped a lot with the way I come as a business owner. And I know I can trust what I say because it's backed by what my crew can do.
Mm, absolutely. And that's really when things can develop and change for the better. And when you have those employees that can come to you with ideas of their own and they're in the field doing things every single day that maybe you're a little bit more detached from now. So like you said, you're not even thinking about certain things, but when they have the ideas and they can implement changes on their own, that's something where it's like, oh yeah, like makes sense, do it, go ahead, like whatever you got to do to make your life easier. And then the whole business, there's like a reverberation effect of that,
100%.
change where it's like now something happens where you can do something for them, they're doing stuff for you, and everything's just growing and kind of working itself out and getting better and improving over time. So
I
those
know. I
are
felt
the
like a
ones
lot of
that
the
you got to
growth
hold on
has
to.
been on my back. And now that maybe it's a blessing that the way things happen at the beginning of the year, I lost 3 employees and I was down to 1. And then randomly people just started coming around that were fitting in the puzzle pieces. And I was like, wait, this is it. This is it. This is exactly what I needed. I needed to go through that hardship of understanding that turnaround because these are the people who I needed to. And they're like, oh, we can do this, we can do that. And like we had that conversation this morning. And like my lead hand, I said, okay, well, you have been doing way more extra than anyone in this position has ever done. So you're getting $1 raise next week on your paycheck
Mm,
because he's working almost till 5 o'clock, doing all the disposal, washing the truck. I mean, any little thing, a detail that he sees that needs to get done because face it, I am not a spring chicken anymore with my body. So yesterday kind of hurt my back. And he's like, don't even worry about the mulch. Like between him and my husband, they're like, don't pick up anything. Like they're there with me in the yard doing it all. And when they see me moving something, they're yelling at me.
yeah.
So it's nice. It is. And it's to the point where it's like, okay, I can actually kind of shift it back into 4th gear because now I have, when I need to go into 5th gear, I have the people who I need for my masonry work. I have the people I need for my woodwork. I have the people that I need. Like I have another guy for my irrigation. And I'm like, dude, just go start this massive install. It's like a $30,000 project. I was like, I'm so double booked through and through with work. Can you just go do the beds? So I go and I spray and I mark out where everything goes. They go and they do all the everything up until the dirt. And all we have to do is plant and mulch.
That's awesome.
And it's still a good profit because of all the materials. So yeah, I mean, I've kind of made it to that level now where everyone is right there with me to have my back, whether it's internal or external. And I'm really, really, really grateful because this year has been a solid year of work, and I really couldn't have done it without my internal and external support.
Absolutely. When you're hiring, do you look for experience or do you just look for the qualities that someone could
Quality.
Qualities?
Honestly, anybody can do this job. It's common sense. It is. If you have light bulbs on in your brain, I can just tell within the first 10 minutes of talking to you if you're going to know how to figure it out. It's true. And it's not for the faint of heart. So do you know how to change a chain on a chainsaw? As easy as that. Like that. I look for skilled labor. I do. I just need people to know, like my most recent hire, it's a female and she's an Army vet and she's worked with her hands her whole life. And like my other lead hand said, man, I had just turned around and it started raining and she was already pulling the blower out from the rain. And he's like, it's stuff like that that makes his job easier on the field, knowing that his partner knows how to think like that to save the equipment. Yep. So it's like, you just kind of know if they know. One of my last employees, he was 22 and he was very, very like teachable. And I always say, put your egos up. No one wants an ego around. I don't care who you are, where you're from. I'm here to do business. I'm here to have fun. If you're going to show up and tell me how to run my business, you got to go.
Yeah.
I'm not here for that.
Yeah, it's just too much confrontation and friction there.
It's unnecessary. I fire clients because of their egos. And they're like, what? I'm like, I don't like you. Straight up.
Yeah. And that's a powerful position to be in too, because not a lot of people talk about that, where it's like, yeah, you can fire your clients too. You don't have to take every job.
You don't have to work for your client.
Yeah.
Especially if they're talking to you like you're an idiot. No, we don't talk like this to anybody. I don't care who you are. I don't care if you're new money, oil people. You don't matter to me. What matters is your personality and I are not connecting, and you're coming at me with absurd amounts of demands that I didn't sign up for. And you're not really taking the time to trust me to do my job. And quite frankly, my fire burned out. So I got to go. I'm not desperate for this check. Bye.
Yeah. Exactly. You don't have to negotiate with them on prices or this or that. And like, it's just, you got to do what's best for you. And at the end of the day, not everybody's a perfect fit, and that's fine. And if they have all those stipulations and things, that's going to be a deal breaker for them. You know, you got to sometimes stand on your own 2 feet, have a backbone, and just realize, hey, look, nothing personal, but this one just might not be for us. Go find someone else. And it's simple.
Yeah. And like, some people are like, okay, well, what do you think this is going to cost? And I'm like, well, what is your budget? I'll straight up say, what is your budget? Because I'm hearing what you're saying, but do you have the money for this? Because I'm not going to waste my time doing a whole entire estimate. Now, I do charge for drawings, but I credit them back in the build if they hire me. But it's like, that's a lot of time for me to sit down at a desk. I'm always behind a steering wheel. Like, you're asking a lot of me. So let me ask you, what is your budget? Because they want to know, what's this cost? No. What's your budget? Straight up. I need to know. It's like buying a house. I'm not going to take you to a 6,000 square foot home if your budget is only for a 2,000 square foot home. Same thing. You want travertine. You want all this, all like Mexican pebble. Okay, you want everything at high end. But okay, do you have the money for it? Because if not, here's your alternative.
Right.
And they're like, oh, I never thought of it like that. Well, I will let you know how it is supposed to be, because my time is valuable, especially with the demands we have here. Lafayette is growing obnoxiously. and there's more work here than we can even manage. Sorry, I'm thinking about my employee.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a blessing. But at the same time, I'm in the position now I can choose my clients, and I will, because I need to be able to be myself when I go to work.
Right. As you should, really.
Mm-hmm.
So if I could snap my fingers and solve any problem for your business right now, what would it be?
You snap your finger and install something for me? Did
And
I hear you correct?
if I could snap my fingers and solve any problem for your business right now, what would it be?
Oh gosh, equipment.
Like,
I would love another work truck. I would love another like simple trailer. I would love a shop with more tools. But in retrospect, you know, the insurance in Louisiana is outrageous.
mm,
It is. I have to still use my personal vehicles, and then my workers have trucks too, or I just get them delivered. I would love a skid steer or a standing front loader. I would love one, but anytime I get extra, the government takes it.
right.
It's just my reality.
Yeah.
And I'm very frugal with my overhead. I don't like to bite off more than I can chew. It just makes me nervous. So right now, a lot of my extras is going to pay off all what little debt I do have, because I'm trying to just get back ahead. So if I have to take out more of a line of credit, I just have more of a grace of an amount that I can play with. And but no, we just rent tools if we need them. There's plenty of places to rent from, but it's just the inconvenience of having to go pick it up. Having to clean it, having to drop it off in a window of time so you don't get overcharged. So, yeah, it's kind of a catch-22 whenever it comes to equipment.
Yeah. And the rent versus buy discussion, that's
Hmm.
one that, depending on who you are as a person and I guess maybe your risk tolerance with your business, that's something that might swing either way for most people. But there's definitely more horror stories of the guys that take out loans and do financing to get all this equipment that they think they needed, but then it's sitting
They
in the
never used.
and it's on a, whatever percent interest rate, loan that they're paying every month. And it's like, yeah, it really helped you with that one job, but if that machine is not working all the time, it's not paying for itself, then you have a serious problem. And it's not like they're cheap either. So, I think for most people, it probably makes a little more sense to kind of do what you're saying and play it more on the frugal side. And, at least for the first couple of years of your business, for the guys that are just starting, rent everything because
Everything. My first equipment that I did purchase was a tiller.
mm,
Yeah, that was the first thing. It was like $350, little steel tiller, and I still have it, and it still runs beautifully. I just like every year we just like I bought a really nice auger this year. I have trimmers now, and then I have this small engine shop in the little town outside where I buy all my steel equipment, and then they register it for me and also do the maintenance on it. Um, I still use my personal weed eater to go weed eat our little 2 yards. I never even bought my company a weed eater because we're not really using it. So why go spend $600 on a commercial weed eater when you can just use the one in my garage for the 2 hours that we need it every other week? So it's just things like that. You really have to sit back and be like, is it worth the expense? No, it's really not. What do
mm,
I really need? Another truck. But my husband's is here and he lets me use it. And then I just got like a really big used Escalade, the extended cab one. And I did not realize how many flowers I can fit in that car. And I was like, wait, well, now I'm using my big old Suburban Escalade. So, yeah, you just do what you have to do. Because at the end of the day, my profit margin needs to be at a certain level. And if it can't be at that level, then my business is going to struggle. And that's not why I'm here. And this is not why I'm working. It's just to not make money. I mean, that's the whole point of being in business.
absolutely, 100%. So, what do you think is the biggest mistake that you've made in running your business?
Oh, there's too many.
I love the question.
uh, Gosh, I think my biggest mistake and one that I really do regret is not going to more marketing events. Not
Mm,
going to more. I was part of the Women's Chamber of Commerce. but my husband was working in oil. And I just had this conversation. I went to the magazine, local magazine that publishes me. It was a luncheon. And a lot of it had to do because of the pandemic. But once everything started opening back up, I was so neck deep in running my business because it was still very much growing at a fast pace and my husband was going off the oil. I was getting invited to events left and right. And I just hate how I could never show up to show my face. And I'm tired of people knowing who I am, but they really don't know me. So I'm starting to make more of an effort this year. I turned a leaf. I do the parade of homes now with the builder that built my house. He's in all the high-end luxury neighborhoods with new construction. So I do every event possibly that I can now to go and show my face and be like, okay, yeah, I've been around for 7 years, but I actually exist as a human. Yeah. And it's really nice because even at that luncheon, I had no idea that the commercial loan officer was affiliated with the builder that I was landscaping for. Seeing just those little connections right there that make a huge difference. I went to a luncheon for the women's chamber before they closed. And at first I was very uncomfortable doing it because I had never really, shown my face because the pandemic kind of closed us off. And then I grew. And so I was coming out again. It was like 2021. Yeah. And then I'm sitting at the table with one of my best friends from high school who had just hired me to do our yard. It was her sister. And here we are. Then her other sister, Leah, who graduated with my sister. And now I do their mom in between their homes. So we call them the compound because there's 3 massive homes together in the country. And that's where we're at currently. And they were one of my first true overhauls as a business at like $20,000 a pop, doing raised beds with rumble wall. Like I could really show my craft and my engineering behind their work. And it was like, okay, this is why you get out of bed and you go shake hands. Absolutely. Because it wasn't for them. I mean, now I can go back and do my homework with their properties, overhauling them with 12 flats of flowers a piece on every property with mulch. So those are the ones I'm saying that's where my profit's good right now. It's because I've maintained their yards after overhauling them. So yeah, if I could go back, I would go and put myself at a table or events more and shake more hands. Absolutely. Yeah.
That's something that I try to stress a lot too with the guys that are in our coaching program and stuff is join your local chamber of commerce. It is literally a meeting of other people in your area that run businesses. Like who else would you rather sit at dinner and talk to? You're literally one of like, just go do it. And it might not pay dividends right away, but over time, and it's not even like that direct first person that you sit down with. It's they know someone who knows someone else who has a friend who does this. And you never know how that all is going to play out for you. And it might not be the first day, first month, but a year later, you get a call from this person that you met at this event that you didn't even like really want to go to, but you did it because you know it was the right thing to do. And then boom, all of a sudden you never know how it's all going to happen and shake out like that. So networking, huge. And then also the other local businesses in your area, like for landscaping guys specifically, I tell them all the time, go to the nurseries, go to the material yards,
supply shops,
stuff like that. The guys that sell the equipment, the local small engine repair, all of those guys need to be in your Rolodex because you never know when you're going to need them, or they get calls all the time for people that are asking for services they don't offer. And if you can be the first person, the first business card in their wallet when they're out and about and someone asks them something and they're referring you to these other people, that's
what it is.
That's where it is.
And unless you're making those personal impressions, especially in this area that I live in, it's big, but it's also still very small. So it's like they want to know, do you know like who you are before they really meet you? They want to make sure that they can trust you before they meet you. And that's just kind of how it unfolds. And that's when you know that you're in a good spot is whenever you're just getting phone calls from word of mouth.
Right.
Yeah.
It's the one factor that is going to make or break your business. I mean, I'm a marketer by trade at this point in time, but still the base level of everything when people sign up or want to become a client or join our program, whatever, it's like, do you have your business set up in a way where you're delivering high quality services and you're generating word of mouth? Because that's going to be the stable, steady jobs trickling in, whatever. And any marketing efforts that you're making beyond that is like pouring gas on the fire, but you need to have the kindling already going. And that's where your network, your relationships, community connections, and stuff like that, all of that has to be established as the base level because that's what's going
Yeah,
to feed your business.
it's true because pretty much every nursery I go to now has referred me. Even Mr. Paul down the street who does the iron work, um, beautiful iron work, custom welding. Um, I now have him in my back pocket. And it, to give an example, in 2022, we had a horrible freeze come through March and it collapsed a lot of the greenhouses in Forest Hill. And a lot of people don't know that Forest Hill is the second largest nursery industry in the nation.
Mm.
This particular nursery that I frequent up north, it's pretty much she's the lady who runs it is pretty much the matriarch up there. If she can't get it, she's gonna find it for me. And she's kind of a girl's girl. And I called her and I was like, Joan, I'm freaking out right now because the nurseries are being bought out. Like, how does an artist go without paint? And
Mm.
it's March. I'm kind of having a heart attack because how am I supposed to do my spring? She goes, what do you need? And I said, this is my constant in my palette right now that's going to work this season for me. She went and there's like a wholesale section that's not part of the retail. And she went and hoarded as much as she could, especially the drift roses, the coral drift roses you could not find in the entire state. And
Mm.
those are my best friends, those in the apricot drift. And she found every single one that she can scrounge up from the collapsed greenhouses, and she she hid them underneath these trees. And it was a corner for Megan to dig out of. And she's like, "This is Megan's pile. Nobody touches." She even told her workers at the nursery, "Don't you touch Megan's pile," because
Mm.
they had to get all those greenhouses cleared out and moved around because the ice collapsed them. And I mean, when I tell you everyone from Maine all the way to California were calling her and wiping her out by thousands. I mean, they were just calling for thousands of hollies, thousands of liriope. I mean, I think she had 10, 18 wheelers on the road every week going across the nation to deliver plants because everyone lost their inventory from the freeze.
Wow.
And between Florida and Louisiana, we're the only ones who really had anything left. And they had to restock those wholesale growers and be able to repropagate for their inventory for the next year. So no, it was a massive mess down here.
Mm.
And Mother Nature has taken me through a lot of roller coasters. And last year, I have to say, I created my own little concoction for weeds. Um, for some reason, the environment north of the main highway I-10 has its own growing of whatever it could grow through the beds, it grew. One being bull thistle. Bull thistle in its peak closes its cells. So the chemical cannot go to it unless it's in its vulnerable state of becoming its maturity or going out of its maturity through dormancy at the end of its peak season. Well, I figured out how to get it and I got it. And when I tell you some of these beds, you didn't even know they had plants in them. They were so infested with weeds. And I'm talking these properties were massive estates, massive. One property, it's a mile from the beginning of the property to the end of it. And beds all over. And I cried. I said, what am I supposed to do? I'm supposed to be the doctor here. So here's Mother Nature throwing me another massive curveball with these clients I make lots of money with. And they're looking at me like, figure it out, please, because we can't do it anymore. And it's an environmental thing, but I mastered it. It's with a lot of trademark chemicals, but I found a ratio that killed every single weed, including bull thistle at its peak.
Mm.
And I've yet to see anything again. So now what I do is when I go to do an install, I call it Megacide. I spray it at the base.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I spray it at the base. Then I put everything, all the materials in. I do my fertilizer and I do my pre-emergent high yield. I love high yield pre-emergent. I think it works great. And I can actually go back and look at designs that I've done last year. And I'm like, holy crap, where are the weeds? Because when I tell you it takes us almost 3 days just to pull weeds, it takes us now 4 hours.
Right on. Where can
So
people buy Megacide?
for me.
There we
I
go.
don't know. I actually got with one of my friends' partners does chemical mixing, and I have some money to play with, and so I don't know where that conversation went last week at lunch, but I'm ready to make it because one of my clients north of I-10, he has a bad environmental issue. One of his house is infested with weeds. The other side of his house, not one weed. So it's an environmental thing. So I was like, all right, can I just try my potion that I made? He goes, sure. So next time we come around, he sticks his out of the door. You brought your magic potion? And I was like, I worked on. He goes, Megan, I did not think we could ever control this. I can't believe you controlled this. And I was like, I gave it to God at that point because I said, I'm either going to have to repay $30,000 worth of plant, or I'm going to create something that's never been created before. And I created something that's never been created before.
Right on.
Yeah.
You let me know when you're in production. I got a list of people that I'm sure would love to
The
have in.
mega side.
Yeah. Right on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes, ma'am. What are some of the biggest changes in the industry that you've noticed since you started?
A lot. You have to stay on top of your plants. There's no denying it. In my profession, every job's pretty much the same song and dance. You just got to keep working with materials. You got to keep on top of the science. You got to stay relevant to even color schemes. Like I've been into purple and pink and white always, but for some reason, purple just keeps making its comeback in the landscape. And you can even go online, Instagram, and just hashtag purple landscape, and you can just see the most beautiful landscape. Um, a lot of things that I've been wanting to start changing and has come more into my production. I pretty much do 50% edible gardens now.
Hmm.
And I started growing my own food. I just got my raised beds, and I'm starting to really get more knowledgeable on agriculture and homesteading. And I just did my first true homestead with 22 citrus trees and massive, massive raised beds, like a true dream homestead. In fact, when I took one of my workers to it, she hadn't seen it yet. She goes, "What in the Kardashian farming?" I said, "I know it's so bougie." That's Amber. Amber, my chicken I was talking about. That's her house.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Amber would come hopping in and out of the beds when we were building them. And what I wish for every year is a really nice winter project. And I got it it was a 3-month long project for the winter. So I love working through the winter. It pays my bills, but it also gives me really, really good, um, I guess it really helps me grow as a designer. It helps me see how large I can push myself and my crew and just keep getting better and better. Like, no, let's switch it up. Let's do something different. Come on, we've already done raised beds. So let's just do it 10 times bigger. It's the same song and dance, just a different, just a different place to play in. And last winter of 22, we did 2 hours north, Marriott. And I've been working with Marriott since the beginning of my career. So I know what they look for. So I'd already overhauled a hotel for this hotel owner. And then he was like, please come up north, please come up north. And I'm like, oh my gosh. But it all worked out. He let us stay there. I wasn't there, but my crew stayed. He got us all the equipment. I already knew the contractor that was overhauling the hotel. He was out of Galveston, Texas. Great guy, because one of my crew members drove the Bobcat into the wall.
Okay.
And it's like, don't worry, I'll fix it. It's okay. And so I realized that the new stucco is now styrofoam.
Okay.
So I was kind of freaking out. He was like, no. He patched it in like 30 minutes, and in an hour, you didn't even know the Bobcat went through the wall. So yeah, that was a nice winter project for us. That took about 3 to 4 weeks. That was about that was a great profit job. He pretty much took out all the grass around the hotel. We put back in all the rock. That's where I took Mega Side. That's another venue that got weeds taken over. You can use all the fabric, but if I would have had Mega Side down on that ground before I laid the fabric, I guarantee those weeds wouldn't have come. So yeah, that was another experiment that I had to do with my chemical. And but no, I really like the big winter projects. And every year I pray that I get one. And by September, it usually comes through for me. Then I know we're going to be working January and through January. Yeah,
Yeah.
because February it gets warm here. Like I was booked February. It was crazy.
Yeah. So your spring rush kind of hits a little sooner. I'm in Florida, so our climates probably
Mhm.
aren't too different. I know Louisiana has its own quirks and things like that, which actually leads me perfectly into my next question. I have a couple clients, and also there's a bunch of other people in our groups that are from Louisiana. Some of them are having a really hard time this year with getting new clients. I don't know if it's the economy or the
It is. It's
and
100%.
the drought last year, I know was something I
Hmm.
talked to those guys about a lot. So how have you noticed kind of this year things maybe being better, worse, or just the
I
environment
don't have a
in
lot
that?
of new. I don't have a lot of new leads. I
Mm,
don't. My phone is very quiet from Google. Last year it was not. I would say last year I probably had about 30% new clientele and 70% new returning. This year it's like 95% returning.
wow.
So like I got one lady, I also have a candle line on top of everything else. She follows me on social media, ordered a candle for me, and she's like, okay, I'm ready. And then I went out and we walked her beautiful property and she told me a scope. So I phased it out for her. And then she still comes around and likes the stuff on social media, but I can just tell between her renovation that she just did, because we have a really hard time finding skilled labor in Louisiana. It's
Mm,
very hard to find skilled labor. We are in high demand for the work, but the skills is not there. That's why I'm very particular on who I hire, because I have to keep my standards where they are. So what I'm noticing is a shift. If it's already been out there and it's already been in good production and it's proof that it's generating its sustainability, you're going to get the return work. If you're
mm,
new and they don't know who you are and they can't see your production, they're not calling you.
yeah.
And it's the truth. And it's a hard truth to swallow, especially if you're starting out in this industry. But they're not just going to call you because you're brand new. They want to know what you're worth. They want to know what your worth is. How do you come? Can you show me pictures? This is what I have. Do you have anything that ties into that? If not, I can't work with you.
Mm,
They want proof out there that you're going to show up and do 100% with the work, and they want 100% customer service. You cannot ignore people. Just you can't, especially when they're throwing tens of thousands of dollars at you. You do not pick up the phone at 8 o'clock at night. They're text messaging me. Their plant's kind of struggling. Oh, well, I think you might be overwatering it in that spot. You want to try moving it to the other area where we move the other plants? Sure. You just got to do it. That's
mm,
why you're there. But I'm also at that level of not starting out so I can back myself. If I was just starting out right now, I don't think it would work. I
mm,
don't. Because there's not enough out there to push yourself into new work to show your worth,
yeah.
because no one's calling you unless you can show your work.
Absolutely. And that's kind of a trend that I've seen across the whole landscape industry in general, whether it's with
Mm-hmm.
lawn care, maintenance, mowing side of things, or stuff similar to what you're doing with the installs, hardscaping, big projects like that. The big guys get bigger and the really small guys get stuck with the clients that are nickel and diming, who can do it the cheapest, right?
Yeah,
It's
it's
the people
true.
that are
And
in
that
between that get
sucks.
stuck.
And it sucks. I mean, look, because I'm a female, that's why I had to start firing people. I'm like, you're not going to nickel and dime me. This isn't my first day working this industry.
Mm,
I'm well into this. Just because I just started off on my own doesn't mean I haven't been doing this since the age of 22. So please have a seat. I don't need your money. Like, you're not going to have to talk with me like, oh, well, I know you can get these plants at this price. And that's not even what they charge me anymore. So where are you getting these numbers? A, and B, you don't need to know what my markup is because you're not doing my books.
mm,
I'm not here with a pickup truck anymore out of my dad's garage. I have a full business that takes a lot of money to run. So I really, I had to deal with that a little bit, and it's okay. I set my standards, and I made myself clear on where I stand as a business owner. And it's fine. And because I have pushed myself into uncomfortable limits, and and I have taken on jobs where I really didn't want to, but man, I'm so happy I did, because at the end, they're the ones who gave me some of the most clients.
Mm.
And it was like very challenging jobs that I breathed hard through, because I'm like, am I going to really screw this up? Because there are people that know people, and I don't know if this is going to work out in the end. And it did. And I've gotten a lot of referrals. So really, if I were just starting out right now, I would be shaking a lot of hands and
Absolutely.
trying to do as much social media platforming. So when they're like, oh, well, let me see your work. Okay. And just try to get as diverse as you can with your work. They want to see diversity. They don't want, nobody wants cookie cutter. They want different. They want somebody that can come out and just give them something so avant garde that is going to move them. And there's not a lot of me out there to do that. And I think that's why I kind of got into this niche. And Lafayette has a very good economy.
Mm.
But at the same time, I noticed a shift this year tremendously, that it's all just returning customers. No one's calling. And
Yeah.
I think it's an election year. Interest rates are up. Other people are focusing on maybe doing other things with their money this year. Who knows at this point? Finances just hit different every year. And the good thing is that as I approach the summer, I'm actually thinking, well, what is there for me this summer? Because it was so hot last year and I swore we weren't going to be working, and we worked.
Mm.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely a conversation that I've had with a couple people this year, is like, with the uncertainty of the economy, all the stuff like that, like it's not just Louisiana that's feeling that. It's pretty much
Mm-mm.
forward. And it's like, if you're an established business where, like you said, at this point, if 95% of your revenue is coming from returning clients, this might be a year where it's like, okay, we're not trying to grow. We're not trying to go crazy. This is a year of surviving as a business, getting
Mm-hmm.
through it, and just making sure that our relationships with our clients that we already have stays solid. And then so we can continue keeping their business. And then also doubling down on the networking and all of the other things that are going to help and compound
Yeah.
in a year or 2 years or however long it takes for things to kind of reboot, and when people are looking to do more projects, bigger stuff like that. So
That's pretty much where I'm at. I'm glad you see that, because that's why I'm like, no, this year I'm going to shake hands. And
yeah,
I think that's when I said, when you're low, you grow. You take advantage of that idle time. It doesn't mean that you're doing bad in business. It means that you've reached the limit where you can actually focus on your business. So no, it's not a negative thing to set back a little bit. It's not.
no.
And plus, I need to figure out what to do with Megaside.
Honestly, I think that that's a huge opportunity. You should definitely pursue
I know.
that.
I said I want to retire at 45 with 4.5 million. Anyone? That'd be great.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's a lot of products out there that claim to work wonders, and they're
We
all kind of
don't.
bigger brands that, they don't deliver on what they're selling you on. And to have a product that was designed, developed, tested, and proven by someone who's in the industry and literally can showcase, hey, here's all the projects we've used this on, and have results like that. It's like, that's something that I can think, especially people that are in that field, in that industry, would be like, I'd rather get something from someone who was in the field, develop this, versus just some, you know,
I know. I called my brother in the industry. We went to lunch that one day and I told him about it. His eyes lit up. And I told him, when I told you about the bull thistle, everyone knows bull thistle don't move
Yeah.
unless you take a shovel to it. And I was like, no, I got it. He goes, how? I said, you have to get right on top of that root. You got to get it. Took them 3 full days to treat this one property, because I said, do not touch the roots of the plants. Go straight to the roots of the weeds. It is a very intricate thing. You cannot overspray, because if you overspray, you're going to kill the vegetation. And everyone took my lead on it, and they did. And I make them wear an N95 mask. I make them wear the gloves, because I got 2,4-D in there. It's very potent.
Yeah.
And the farm that I just did, the homestead, did Megacide, put in the gravel, put Megacide again. Guess what popped up? Good old cocoa grass. But everyone knows cocoa grass is its own little glass of champagne and a tea party. So the only thing that kills cocoa grass is the sedge hammer.
Mm.
And then that takes about a month for it to decompose. So I went back about a few weeks later, no more cocoa grass. The only place it was coming through was in her row beds we did along the fence line, and she was starting to till to plant. So she knew once she put mulch down and some more pre-emergent, maybe that would have helped. But everything that I sprayed with Sedgehammer went away, and there was not one new weed introducing itself because my Megacide sustained it. Because it has a pre-emergent and herbicide and a whole lot of things to set it on fire. Yeah.
So when it comes to the projects that you're doing, obviously a lot of them are higher ticket, tens of thousands of dollars worth of materials, bigger jobs, right?
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, that's a very, very different sales process than
Mm-hmm.
me trying to close you on, $50 a week for mowing your lawn. So do you have any tips or tricks or maybe like some good one-liners when it comes to, closing clients, or what does kind of your sales process look like and how do you
I'm
um
myself, like just straight up myself. I
yeah.
just walk the property. I'm like, okay, well, this is what you got. What is your vision? What are you trying to get out of it?
Mm,
Tell me how you want to enjoy this space. Well, I have this oak tree and I really want to make it a focal point because I love the shade, but what can really grow under it? And I have this area that doesn't get any sun, so it's just mud. Okay, well, do you want to hardscape it and make it a seating area underneath the tree? Like so, and then make a trail, some kind of trailing system. And then I'm like, okay, well, let's sit down and sketch. So then I'll fill them out and what they, oh, I like that. I like that. Okay. Well, at that point, then I'm like, okay, well, like today, Miss Carla in her backyard, she wants a partition going across the backside of her pool because it separates. There's nothing for your eye to stop it. Like it's a whole run-on sentence and it needs a comma. It's straight up. So it's like, and so she's thinking, oh, okay, like an 18-inch, like by 1 foot wide seating wall, and then having the square planters. And I said, okay, well, your eye moves in odds. So let's make 3 partitions. So you'll have 6 planters. And in between those 2 openings, we need to go vertical. And you love Peggy Martin roses. So let's make an arch in between, oh, I never thought about going vertical. I was like, yes, your eye needs to move up because there's so much air square footage. Like, and then this massive oak tree. So it's like there's nothing for your eye to catch in between because it's just this big open space. She has travertine and then grass. Okay, well, where's the comma?
mm,
Where do we stop? And then she had like all this slab that her husband wanted to keep. And then so I said, okay, well, let's break up half of it. And then in this voided space, I was like, why don't you just do raised garden bed? And she goes, oh my God, I never thought about that. And it's just like, because she wanted to know, how am I supposed to move in this space? She didn't know how to move in her own backyard. I'm like, okay,
right.
well, this is how you're going to move. This is what you want. And so I'm going to get on AutoCAD, draw it up, give her a cross section, figure out the math so we can hand it over to Eduardo and he can build it. And then another thing was, okay, well, I want a raised planter by my house, but our house has beautiful, beautiful old 1800 brick on it. And so she goes, do I take the stonework around my spa and put it up against my house? I said, no. We're going to keep the story the same along your house. And we're going to use the stone you have around your spa to do your seating wall because that's a story separate from your house. So it's like things like that. You have to I don't know, you have to be in the space. And
Mm,
so then from there, I'm like, okay, well, she's not really someone that has a budget, but you know, I'm thinking, and then I say, okay, is it something that you want to phase out? I start with that. Okay, was this something you want to phase out? Because it's a significant amount of construction. I know what it's going to cost, but they
mm,
kind of don't. So, and Miss Carla understands it, but if it wasn't a client who understood cost and understood, their boundaries of what the construction part takes, I would educate them then. Be like, okay, well, X amount of square feet of this is going to cost this. It's going to take about 2 weeks of labor to construct. Um, and planter boxes on this size cost X amount, and with labor, okay, so you're looking at about $32,000 worth from start to finish of material labor. And then they're either going to be like, okay, and they're like, oh, I wasn't thinking that much. Okay, well, do you want to phase it out? Do you want to break it up and do like the first phase for like 15,000, and then we come back next year and do the second phase? Trust me, when you say phase it out, they get more comfortable.
Right.
And then you can, then you can get a little bit more intimate with them when it comes to starting. Then you're like, okay, well, when are you expecting this turnaround? Is it something that you want to do quickly, or is it something that you want to, I see you need to do a fence. We usually try to be the last of the Mohicans, so nothing gets messed up. With this, do you want in-ground irrigation and lighting, all that. And I just take my time and I listen and I try to feel their energy. But when it comes down to it, I have to know where they lie with their budget. Because on my end, as a contractor and a designer, I can't go and design the Palace of Versailles and they're just looking for a picket fence traditional wallflower yard. Like you have to be on their level. And I think once you're on their level, you just learn how to grace those questions, and then they're comfortable enough with you to answer them. You can't just be like, well, this is what I would do. This is what you need to do, because I can't tell you how many of those egos exist. And they come and they deliver for $10,000 stuff that does not make sense and dies. And the first thing I hear from clients, so-and-so came and did this and they did not listen to me. And I'm so disappointed because look at their end result. I'm like, because they don't know what they're doing.
Right.
They just wanted to hurry up and sell you on something. And I said, did they even ask you how much you were wanting to pay? No, they just gave me a bill. Well, that's rude, first of all. And that's how you don't get your clients to come back to you.
Right.
So ears on. Number one, ears on. Listen, listen, listen. Write it down. Take the details. Take the notes. So even when you submit that estimate, you reiterate everything y'all talked about so they know they were heard. And guess what happens? Within 5 minutes, you get an $8,000 deposit in your Venmo.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah.
I love everything that you just said. That's literally case in point, sales 101. Listen, you have 2 ears and one mouth. If you ask the right questions, the client will tell you everything that they want.
Everything.
They might have a vision in their head, but they're not landscapers. They don't know how to articulate that. So you almost need to like prompt them in asking the questions. Like you said, oh, well, what about this? And it works like this with 3. So what about this? And like, you're not telling them I would do this. You're asking them the questions to get them to tell you what they actually want. And then paying attention and listening to all that, putting it together. And then, like you said, meeting them on their level where we're like, okay, this is what you want. This is your vision. This is the budget. How about we just marry these two, find something that works with everybody, and boom, we're good. Like you said, the deposit hits and we're, scheduling
rolling.
the weekend. So
like I have a contractor right now. I have to get firm with him because he wasn't really delivering. If I'm hiring you as a project manager, you're going to talk to my clients. You're not just going to show up and turn around and leave. Yep. No, we don't do that. We do not do that. So she was wanting to change out her bricks or whatever. And so I'm like, no. So he went on Saturday morning. I made him. Yep. No, you're not doing this. The client called me back for the 3rd time. And this is the biggest thing. This one is very custom made. She has a tattoo on her ankle. And in the side of her brick patio, we're doing a 4x4 diamond cutout. And we're going to do a tile mosaic of her tattoo, which is canna lilies. In her center, there's 3 canna lilies, and the center one is the tallest one. And that's her youngest sister that passed. So those canna lilies represent her sisters. Right. And this is a very, very personal project. But she's also been with me for so long now that I would really be the only person to do that for her. And I was like, you can't come to my client's house and act like that. No, it's not allowed. Like, you got to show up. You let her know you're there. Bring her the samples she's asking for because she agreed to this and is already giving us the money. You don't ignore people. Right. You just don't. You'll never have that phone call and they'll give you nasty reviews. That's not where I'm at. Yep. And that's the ego I don't like. You can't just be at the gym. You're not on that level yet.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And missing the whole point of like, dude, you don't understand how sentimental and like how much emotional investment there is in this project from the client. So it's like when you're treating her or behaving like that, you're not just, it's not about the your relationship with her. Like she's feeling that way about the project, which has a whole other sentimental piece to it. So it's like, dude,
Yes.
you really we need to make sure this goes off, without a hitch, the way it's supposed to be. And yeah,
Yeah, and trust me, I went Friday all the way to Forest Hill, came back down. I was by myself, plugged in plants at 3 different properties, because they just were missing or needed to replace, whatever. And it's 6 o'clock at night, and she's calling me, and I was like, "Oh, nope, nope, no, this isn't how I'm ending my week." So, you just there's times where you have to just be the boss.
yeah.
I hate being the boss. It's not often that I have to, crack down on people, but I have worked really hard to get where I'm at, and I don't want to lose that.
Yeah. Especially not as the result of someone else's behavior or actions.
100%. And if it was
Can't
up
go
to
on
me,
with
I would
that.
have probably fired him, but we're too far invested in this now. And they're almost done with the portion of the work. She's going to go out of state, or well, no, out of the country. And then when she comes back, then we're going to be able to do the fun part, which is the mosaic tiling. So, and then bring in her beds. And she has a little edible bed. See, everyone's putting somewhere to eat in their garden. So yeah, this one is, I mean, I do everything custom. Everything's custom. And it's because I try to connect the environment and my clients. I try to marry their energy. And it really, I guess it's just my gift that I understand it. But if you practice it and you're open to all the challenges and you want to just dive deep into this side of it, it can work. But it takes a lot out of you too to go residential, because commercial, you're in and out, you're in and out. Where when it comes residential, you're personal. You're very personal.
Absolutely. All right. This has been an awesome conversation. I got 2 more questions for you if you got a couple more minutes.
Yeah, I do. My
All
kids
right.
are at school.
Cool, cool. So, what advice do you have for business owners that are trying to keep track of their numbers, specifically with like bookkeeping, accounting, stuff like that? Because as your business grows, the money grows. And then, like you said, you've got taxes, all these other things, overhead. Keeping track of all of that can be kind of a nightmare for someone that.
Yeah, that's a great question. I do all of my accounting every Friday, every week. Do your mileage, do your transactions, put them where they belong in your QuickBooks, whatever program you use. Every Friday, make time, or whatever day of the week works best for you. Take 2 hours, 1 hour for marketing, social media, do whatever. 1 hour of marketing, 1 hour of accounting.
Yeah.
Know your constants. Know when those constants are due, and know that you need X amount by this date. You need okay, well, if the numbers aren't there this month, do you have a reserve? You always need a reserve.
Mm.
And so I do kind of what I do for my personal home. I have 50% expenses, 30% personal, 20% savings. I do the 50/30/20 method.
Mm.
So, am I doing the math right? No, 20 or whatever. It amounts to, yeah, 50/30/20. Yeah, that's right. So
Mm.
I do the same for my business. And last year I paid way more in taxes, but I did it on purpose so I can kind of get a return, which I did. And as a business owner, you really don't get returns, but you do if you pay your quarter taxes. So I try to at least pay 1 quarter in through the year, and then whatever taxes I, pay monthly and quarterly. And so I know that's my constant. I know my insurance and my workers' comp is a constant. I know my payroll tax is a constant. So know your constants, know when they're due. Then set up yourself 50/30/20. Try to price every job. I know people who run full mobile and go companies. It's really hard to stay on top of profit. But if you can try to get accounts, I know at first you're just overturning these little accounts, little accounts, little accounts. But as long as they're constantly growing you, try to make those little accounts that you started with just your profit margin, if that makes sense. Take all those profits, put that aside, and then leave the bigger jobs to handle your overhead. Because that's what I'm starting to do, and it's working. I have little turnaround jobs, like the one I did yesterday by myself. That's all profit. It was just me on the job. So I know those little jobs I put straight into my savings account from a business.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Right on. Is there any like tools, software stuff that you use to kind of help manage and keep track of all that?
I like QuickBooks. It's been the easiest for me. It links all my bank accounts and my accountant to it. So there's really nothing more simpler than for me to open my phone. And no matter where I'm at, if I'm in a doctor's office, I'm like, oh, I need to do my accounting real quick. And I'll itemize all my transactions. I'll quickly do my mileage. And then, I just try to stay on top of it weekly, because the volume that I'm at, if I don't, even my mileage, I'm like, wait, where was this address? And I have to Google it to remind myself where I went,
Yep.
so it can kind of slip through the cracks on you. I mean, my best friend's a CPA and he only does his books every quarter. But for me, he doesn't have the transactions I have.
Right.
I'm paying vendors, I'm paying payroll. I mean, I'm swiping my credit card at Lowe's, like you have to just kind of stay on top of it on a weekly basis.
Yeah.
And
It's
if you,
things are
and I also like paying my employees weekly. I just find it easier to keep track of everything if you do it weekly.
right. And like you said, when it comes to volume, there's so much going on, especially with this type of business where you're buying materials, gas, employee payroll,
Mm-hmm.
all there's a lot of swiping of the card and paying and money coming in and out. And like
Mm-hmm.
I said, if you don't do it every week or have some sort of structure or system to how you manage these things, you can get buried really, really fast. And then once
Yep.
you're buried and it's not fresh in your head anymore, you don't remember what's what. And it can be
Mm-mm.
really hard to dig yourself out of that because you still got more work coming in and it compounds very, very quickly. So
It does. And I just have a really good CPA. So, I mean, I pretty much do my own bookkeeping. There's really no need for anybody else to do it. At that point, that's another frugal thing that I do. Why am I going to pay somebody if I can do it? Why am I going to pay anybody marketing if I can do it? I just did my homework and I figured out real. Not that hard. So, like, I just, I pay my CPA. He takes care of all the main stuff and I take care of everything in house. But if you do it weekly, oh my God, by the time tax season comes in, all you got to do is press submit
yep.
because everything's already been filed. Yeah, I have a lot of people who are like, how do you stay on top of your stuff? I'm like, QuickBooks. They're like, oh, I don't have that. And I was like, what are you doing? I don't know. I just have all these receipts and I don't know what's coming in and out. I'm like, good luck. Like, get a
Yikes.
program. I don't know. There's a lot of good programs out there. One's called like Honey List or Honeydew List. And
Hmm.
like,
I've never heard of
you can do like estimates, invoicing, everything through there, and it also connects to your QuickBooks. So like I need to actually get on that system. My friend who does home organizing showed me, and so she has a little crew, and so she's like, anytime that they're doing upsells, like my workers are on jobs, like, hey, the client's asking for this, this, and this. Okay, well, let me go to the nursery. Like I was so heat exhausted, I totally forgot to charge my client for the Buddleia and the Cleara, and I said, in Louisiana, we call it lagniappe, something a little extra, like a little gift. And I said, hey, I was so sunstroked. I don't even charge you for the 3 plants, the Buddleia and the Cleara. Just consider it lagniappe. Like stuff like that can really fall through the cracks easily.
Hmm.
So I love my workers because they're like, they start, hey, we did disposal here. Disposal. You would never think, but gosh, that adds up. When you're having to pay your worker to take the truck and his hours of labor to go deliver it. And it's like, God, I keep forgetting to charge for disposal. So I'm like, y'all get me to stay on top of that
Yeah,
because I need to charge for that. So
absolutely.
it really, that little app is going to help us stay organized through in like our scheduling and stuff. Right now, I still kind of analog it on paper because it changes so much. It
Yeah.
does. Our schedule changes almost weekly. We can have like an idea, but the day by day still changes.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially with the weather.
Yeah. And like you said, with the financial thing, whether it be the tiny little items that you're forgetting in the beginning processes with an estimate or proposals, or just
Mm-hmm.
the tiny little things that add up throughout the day. The guy who spent an extra 10 to 20 minutes behind the windshield bringing the debris to scrapyard or whatever. Like
Yeah,
it's death by 1,000 paper cuts. It's not the one big transaction. Everyone remembers those, right? But it's the tiny little things that add up over time where you're just bleeding out slowly. And that's the stuff that
that's it. You're so correct about that. If you can't stay on top, that's why I'm like, stay on top of your books weekly, because then you'll know what's bleeding your company.
yeah,
Yeah, it's
absolutely.
true. So true.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's the part of and you asked at the beginning, like, what was the hardest thing that you had to accomplish as a business owner is understanding business. So I didn't go to business school. I did. I took simple business math my first semester of college, but that was just understanding profit and demand, not how to actually run it.
Right.
Yeah. But
And
I'm
it's a
self
good,
taught, and I have a lot of friends that are smart and we're kind of starting on their own too with businesses. So, it's good to reach out. I always say a question is never dumb. A question is you wanting to learn. And my clients always said that, oh, I know this sounds stupid. I said, no, it's not stupid. You're trying to learn. Just give yourself grace. You're never be embarrassed to ask for help, because everyone's out there wanting to help you. You'd be surprised. Nobody's going to turn an eye to you, especially another business owner. They're almost wanting to help you with it. I have so many friends in the landscape industry that I'm like, oh my God, I cannot get to this property to overhaul it. They're having a wedding and a photo shoot this weekend. Can you please just go do it for me? They're like, yes, let's go walk it. And I'll get them all their materials ordered. They go pick it up, they turn it over for me, and they're happy to do it. And
Mhm.
so don't show up like I'm the biggest and the baddest. No, 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 no. Be best friends with everyone, because you're gonna need each other,
Yep.
especially when times get hard. I've been propositioned twice now to be bought out, and I won't give it up,
Right.
because people are gonna cry.
Yeah. The relationship would not be the
Right.
same
Not
between
at
the
all.
clients. It's you and them. And if someone else took it over, it just wouldn't.
I mean, I would love to retire and start my mega site production, but
Right.
I look at it as, nah, I made it this way for a reason. So, I mean, y'all are welcome to be partners with me if I ever need help. I'll never not be cordial, and I'll never not want to be someone's friend in this industry, because you'd be surprised working at where I've worked. I applied for a job in Florida years ago,
Mm.
and they wind up knowing my old HR person from Brickman. Then the guy who was the district manager wind up knowing my old coworker in Virginia. I'm like, see, even on a national level, it gets small.
Absolutely. And that's another thing
Yeah.
that some guys might see it as counterintuitive, but being friends with your competitors, or at least quote unquote, like competitors, other people doing the same
Mhm.
in your area, it seems like you might not want to do that. But in reality, those are the best people to have on your phone, because you never know. You get bogged down with work. Hey, man, I really need help making sure these properties get cut this week. Or, hey, I've got an install job that's a little above the scope of what I thought. Can you help me with this? Or
Mhm.
whether it's exchanging work phone numbers, contact, stuff like that.
All it is.
It's easier to eat together than compete against each other. So
Oh,
even the people that are in
100%.
the same industry should be your friends too.
No, then I really think I owe it to everyone being just so open and wanting, like, I have people call me like, hey, we're slow. Do you have any work? They're not even afraid to call me to ask for work. And I think that has speaks volumes on me and where I've put myself in this industry, for them to feel comfortable enough to ask me those questions. And then I'm like, yeah, actually, I do need your help. And
Mm,
then, I mean, I have my brother, my that I call my brother in this area, that I was like, I just can't do this. I was in tears. I was like, I'm buried right now. Where
mm,
can you help me? He's like, let's go to lunch. And so that's when I told him about my mega side. And he was like, wait, what are you doing with this?
yeah,
Yeah. And it's like, they want to be there to be your cheerleader at the end of the day. They don't want to be your competitor. They really want to be there to be your cheerleader, because at the end of the day, y'all can actually sit down and understand each other,
yep,
because you're the
100%.
ones doing it.
Yeah, no one's gonna know more about what's going on in your head and in your life than someone that's literally in the same set of shoes as you are doing the same thing. So
It's
definitely
true.
pretty easy to relate to them. So
Yeah.
last question I got, what do you guys do to protect yourselves legally, whether it be with contracts, the, formation or structure of your business, LLCs, S corps, all of that stuff. What do you guys do to safeguard you and your personal assets as well as the business? Especially since you guys kind of have a lot on the line when you have these bigger, higher ticket, expensive
Oh,
projects. Things
sure.
could go wrong, but you got
Mm-mm.
to put things in place to make sure that you and your client honestly are protected as well.
Sure. I am an S corp. I'm legally, with the Secretary of State as a working entity for a business. I do everything legally. I don't hide away from anyone. So yeah, I'm an S corp, and then I have, your actual business insurance that covers about $1 million coverage on damage, and
Yep.
then I also have really high coverage on my work truck. So if anything were to happen, because people love to sue in Louisiana, that's why our insurance is the highest in the nation. And I cannot tell you how many times I've driven that work truck and people brake check you.
Yeah.
It's very sad how desperate people are to brake check you in a business vehicle. So I purposely got a Chevy truck so I can track my workers on GPS.
Yep.
So I know, if anything's wrong with the truck, because my thing is, I want my workers to be safe on the road. My extra money just went to buying a new set of tires. I just make sure everything stays maintained, because my number one thing is, for my employees' sake, I have them protected. If they're protected, they can go to work and feel safe. I have an employee manual book that one of my dear clients is an HR person and was able to make for me. So in my handbook, I have everything written out what I expect out of them. For instance, we have to cut huge hollies and you got to get on a 12-foot ladder. Do not get on that ladder without a buddy at the bottom. You're not allowed to use any power tools on a ladder without a buddy next to you. Because workers' comp is not something I want to ever claim. And it is scary. There's like some kind of law there. And given that we're in an oil field based thing, a lot of oil companies have to go bankrupt because people, the way they sue on from falling, and it's sad. But, I just try to make, like, for instance, I had a client that was not using his head and pulled the vine with the trimmer and almost cut off the top of his finger. So I'm like, okay, y'all, like, it's not a rush. And I remind them every day, it's going to be here tomorrow. My favorite boss always told me that, Megan, it's going to be here tomorrow. And I tell them that at the end of the day, if we can't finish, we can always come back.
Right.
I don't want you to rush. I want you to do it right. And I want it done right the first time, because this is why we're here, is because we can execute things properly and it's going to be right the first time. I don't rush through anything. I always take my time. So my thing is the same thing whenever it comes to labor. If you rush, you're going to get hurt. So take care of yourself, because I'm going to take care of you. So in return, take care of yourself. And then I have it in my contract. Do not let animals roam free. Dog poop has to be picked up. We are not in the poop business. And your animals, when they're spazzing out around us, I just prefer them to be put up, because I don't really care to be worrying if your dog runs out in the street. Like, don't make that my responsibility. So there's a lot of things that I've had to, over the years of learning, where my boundaries are to keep us safe. And in terms of property, I put all the markings. Sorry, that's the church across the street. I put all the markings back on my client, because utility marking is only going to get street side. I can't tell you how many clients have not marked where their main water line is, and we busted through it with the shovel. And I went back and I said, I have that in my contract with you, that you have to mark all of your lines on your property so this gets avoided. And they had to cough up to $2,100 to fix it. I don't know your property. I gave you a schematic and showed you where we would be digging. And I put it in contract. You have to show me where these infrastructural lines are. If not, this is what happens. So no, I don't like the fact that some of my clients don't read. But in the return, I'm covered.
Yeah.
So yeah, the little things like
you.
that are going to make or break your company.
Absolutely. Yep.
Because that $2,100 could have been like half the profit of the job, you know?
It sucks
Yeah.
working for free too when that kind of stuff happens, and you know it, and you're just like, damn, we sunk this one. So
Right.
making sure that you're liable for only the work that you're doing. The client has their responsibilities. If they can't uphold that, it can't fall back on your shoulders at the end of the day because we negotiated this, we set this all out. It was laid in there from the beginning, like you said. It's not your fault that they can't read. So you gotta.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, sometimes you got to play hardball and stick to your guns. And if it's in the contract, it's in the contract, but it's on them sometimes, which,
Yeah. I mean, like, and now with the way people, it's getting paid can be hard.
yeah,
Getting paid can be hard. So, you have to be very, very firm on that invoice. Hey, you don't pay me in 14 days, you get my percentage. I have to swipe on that credit card.
yep,
And it's not
really,
20% right now. So it's going back on you. And
yeah,
don't be afraid to tell them that because
yep,
it's not fair, especially as a small business. Yeah, you gave me a deposit, but that's not everything. That it's not covering everything. It's just a deposit to get me there. But you
right,
got to finish paying me in order for me to finish paying my vendors, to finish paying the payroll, to pay my taxes, to pay my gas, to pay the insurance it took me to get out here. Like, oh, and another thing that people don't realize is that they'll try to, well, not now, but back in the day when I was first starting, they were nickel and diming my hours. And I'm like, you realize it took me 3 hours to go grab all this before I even got here.
mm,
Like, that's where that extra money is coming from. I'm not just throwing on this just to take you advantage of you. Like, no, this is because this is what it takes in order to get the job here.
right,
Yeah. You have to pay me delivery. You have to pay my labor hours. I have to go and grab all this. It doesn't just appear in my backyard.
yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah, clients can sometimes be a little oblivious to the whole operation that's happening. And it's like, listen, you can't just expect me to charge you for only the time from when I step foot on your property to when the project's done. Because in reality, as a business owner, it's costing me money from the second that I step off my front porch in the morning, turn my truck on and start going somewhere, employees show
True.
up. It's like that's all money that's coming from somewhere that I'm going to have to pay. And so, naturally that makes its way into the
Yeah. If I'm going to the nursery and it's in my car and it's just me, it's $50 an hour. It
Yep.
is. I mean, I'm not getting out of bed to drive an hour to go pick up plants for free. Yeah. But no one really says anything about it. I'm very, very, very fair on my pricing.
Mm,
As long as my profit margin's there, I could go harder if I wanted to. But I think that's why I am where I'm at as a business owner, is because I've been very fair with my pricing.
yep.
Yeah.
And I think that's the solution ultimately is being fair and being completely transparent. There's no hidden fees. There's
There's
no you
no,
haven't
yeah.
collected. I will tell you exactly where that money is coming and going from and where it's all worked out
Mhm.
as far as this job goes. And you have to, it's kind of unfair on their half too if you have a charge in there that you can't explain. That's just
And
not.
I work for a company where they don't put any pricing. They just give you the materials and a total because they
Yep.
don't want you to go and say, oh, well, I can go get it here for X amount. Yeah, people do try to do that. I've had a couple clients that itemize my plants and they're like, actually, you're cheaper. Duh. Because I
Mm,
don't have to have a 400% markup. I'm literally going to the source and coming to your house. I'm not having it sit there and paying inventory tax on it. It's a
right.
difference. Yeah, they forget like nurseries that are retail have to pay inventory tax. So, yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. Well, Megan, it has been an absolute pleasure. You have a lot of awesome information. I'm going to have a very long night ahead of me editing and chopping this all up. There's been a lot of really awesome moments. So I really appreciate you taking the time. I'll definitely make sure that anywhere these clips or videos end up, I'll have your socials tagged in there. But for people watching, where can they find you? What's the best way to get in touch with you if they have questions or stuff like that?
Every social media platform, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Megan Montgomery Design.
All right.
Yeah.
There you
And
go.
meganmontgomerydesign.com is my website. So yeah, I'm everywhere.
Perfect. Awesome. Like I said, I'll
Yeah.
make sure to have all of those linked and, tagged in the bottom of wherever these videos end up. So if you guys got
Yeah.
questions, there you go.
Awesome. Well, I
Right
appreciate
on.
meeting you. Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. Thanks for taking the time out of your afternoon. And yeah, it was a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
All right. Right on. Take it easy.
You too.
Bye.